Greetings, gamers! It's John of Video Games in the World. Welcome to the new series, World of Timelines. This is a series that focuses on the timelines of many of your favorite video game series and not so beloved ones as well. Today's episode is the timeline of Resident Evil, which won over The Legend of Zelda. Yay! The Resident Evil series has been around since 1996 and redefined the horror genre in video games by introducing the survival horror genre. Resident Evil is inspired by the stories of Sweet Home and the Living Dead series by the late George A. Romero, and has various horror movie references such as The Shining, The Crazies, and so many more. This series has 30 games, or 60 if you count pachinko and mobile games, but screw them anyway. This game also spawned novels, movies, comic books, and tons of merchandise as well. In this episode, we will explore the timeline of the series and each of their events, excluding the non-canon games. So before we begin, there will be spoilers, you've been warned. Pre-Resident Evil, Mother Miranda. Before Umbrella, Wolf Pharma, and Trisol existed, we must head back to the time of Mother Miranda. In the early 20th century, Mother Miranda is living a peaceful life with her daughter Eva in Eastern Europe. But then, in 1919, the Spanish flu pandemic whipped to her community and killed so many of her people, including her beloved daughter. The death of Eva sent Mother Miranda into a downward spiral and heads down into a cave beneath the village to find death and be with her daughter. But what she finds down there is a mold called the megamycete, a genus of fungus-like organism that assimilates the DNA of animals, allowing it to consume and replace its host, much like that alien from The Thing. This mold gifted her with regenerative abilities, and with its newfound power and knowledge, she sought to resurrect her daughter. Mother Miranda continues to experiment with the megamycete for decades and creates a parasite known as Kadu. In 1951, a young British student has stumbled upon her research after getting lost on a hiking expedition. This man turned out to be none other than the aristocrat and scheming scientist Oswald E. Spencer. Spencer became fascinated with Mother Miranda's research, which inspired him to create a virus that could extend human life but bring the world to the brink of annihilation. He found a symbol representing the sigil of the four houses as inspiration for a logo that resembles an umbrella, a logo that becomes a symbol of fear and global destruction in the years to come. The origin of Umbrella Inc. The 1960s, a time of great change with historical events such as civil rights marches, the moon landing, and the Beatles changing the way we lived. In 1962, Spencer has architect George Trevor design a mansion and research laboratory in Arklay Mountains in the Midwestern United States. When Trevor finishes his masterpiece of a mansion with evil secrets in 1967, Spencer invites the Trevor family to stay there, permanently. 1 year before that creepy mansion was complete, Spencer joined with fellow aristocrat Edward Ashford and Dr. James Marcus to find a rare mythical flower that could extend human life. Opportunity rose as Dr. Marcus developed a hypothesis about a mythical West African flower called Stairway of the Sun, had viral properties that bestowed powers through a viral mutagenic infection. The virus was called Progenitor. It was in the Kijuju region and used by the Indapaya tribe in rituals. If a young boy survived the viral properties of the flowers, then he will become the tribal chief. In a trip to the Indapaya tribal lands, the fabled flower was discovered in an underground garden and a virus discovered within it. However, flowers cultivated in the United States failed to replicate the virus. Requiring significant funding beyond their aristocratic links to bring about their eugenics dream, Spencer formed Umbrella Pharmaceuticals on behalf of Ashford and in different markets and established a base in the Indapaya Garden so progenitor samples can be transported over the Atlantic instead. The Umbrella Corporation was seen by the public as a pharmaceutical company, but the company was used as a front for the creation of bioorganic weapons, better known as BOW or BOW, for military purposes. Requiring more money, the three agreed to a plan later known as the Tyrant Virus Project, where they would independently develop strains of progenitor to sell to the US military as a weapon. Edward Ashford would build an Umbrella research facility in the Antarctic, where the Code Veronica project would take place. While trying to experiment the progenitor virus onto himself, Edward Ashford died, although his death was believed to be masterminded by the power-hungry Spencer. Edward Ashford's death will be the beginning of the downfall of the once great reputation of the aristocratic family when his son Alexander succeeded him. Alexander Ashford became the new head of the Antarctic facility, but his rank was low due to not being a virologist, but a geneticist. Desperate to restore the glory of the Ashford family, Alexander will create twin children using the genes of the Ashford family matriarch, Veronica. These twins will be named Alfred and Alexia. Meanwhile, in the Arkley Mountains, Spencer took control of the Umbrella facilities and continued his research in the Trevor Mansion, while Dr. Marcus became the head of the newly built Umbrella training facility, which was used to train new interns and scientists. The Wesker Project. The Wesker Project, or Project W, was a eugenics project spearheaded by Spencer in the swinging 1960s, which intended to develop a race of superhumans as he believed that ordinary humans were decadent and corrupt. This project was named after the first director of the project, Dr. Wesker, and Spencer longed for a utopian world full of gifted intellectuals. This project has several hurdles to jump over. Firstly, when someone is injected with a progenitor virus, there will be a high chance that the host might die. Secondly, the Spencer Foundation had nowhere near the resources required to fulfill this project, leading to the founding of Umbrella Inc. as a means of raising funds and developing bioweapons as a means of testing the virus for Project W. Thirdly, the utopian vision could not be achieved if the candidates did not share Spencer's ideals. Project W solved this problem by selecting children as candidates who could be educated to have these ideals. In the first phase of the project, there were hundreds of children from around the world that were adopted legally or otherwise based on their biological parents' contributions to mankind. They were all given the surname Wesker and were given the best education that money can buy while being closely monitored by the Project W team. They all became Umbrella employees, and among these candidates were Albert and Alex Wesker. Alex was close to Spencer and was given knowledge about the project, but Albert was not given such knowledge. In 1998, there were 13 candidates who were considered the cream of the crop and determined to be the best subjects for the infection of the virus. 11 of the candidates died except Albert and Alex. Albert obtained superhuman powers, except Alex because of a degenerative disease at the time of infection. Albert will go on to develop the Ouroboros Project, while Alex will create the T-Phobos Project to cure her disease. The project was terminated in 2006 with the death of Spencer. Fall of the Ashford family. The Ashford family was once known as a well-respected aristocratic family dedicated to science that was started by its matriarch, Veronica. Her later successors were Stanley Ashford, Thomas Ashford, Arthur Ashford, and one of the founders of Umbrella, Edward Ashford. When Edward Ashford died in the middle of the virus project, his son, Alexander, would succeed him, but unfortunately, Alexander was not a virologist, but a geneticist, which put him in the lower-level office of Umbrella. This would greatly tarnish the reputation of the once proud Ashford family. Desperate to restore the glory of the Ashford family, Alexander will create twin children using the genes of the Ashford family matriarch, Veronica. The eggs were implanted inside of a woman who gave birth to a boy and a girl, who would happen to be Alfred and Alexia. While Alfred's intellect was higher than average, Alexia had a genius-level intellect. Alexia will graduate at the mere age of 10 from a prestigious university and was given position of head researcher at Umbrella, which proves that she was super smart. Alfred would later convince his sister Alexia, who he idolized, to lend him the jewel of her choker, and he somehow convinced his father to lend him the jewel of his earring. Using the jewel of his ring, Alfred discovered the truth about his and Alexia's birth when he entered a secret lab. Upon learning the truth, the twins grew to immensely hate their father. During the development of the T. Veronica virus, Alexia became very obsessed with it, which greatly concerned Alexander. Alexander will create a weapon known as the linear launcher to neutralize the host of the T. Veronica virus. She used the genes of a queen ant to create the virus, and she and her brother captured their father and experimented with the virus on him. It turned out that Alexander was a failure as a test subject, and he would turn into a monster that was called Nosferatu. Nope, not that Nosferatu. Alfred and Alexia sealed and tied him up inside of a dungeon. Alexia decided to perform the virus on herself, but it would take 15 years for her to bond with it. Alexia would put herself in a state of cryogenic sleep, leaving Alfred all alone. Alfred would run the illegal prison island known as Rockford Island. It was a prison island for those who betrayed the company and were used as guinea pigs, aka test subjects. Alfred's loneliness greatly affected his mental state and developed a dual personality. One personality was his own self, and the other was him pretending to be his beloved twin sister, Alexia. The betrayal and death of Dr. Marcus. In the groovy 1970s, James Marcus would conduct a research using a reliable supply of animal test subjects, which the Arklay training facility could store for a long-term study. Although they were many brilliant and talented researchers, Marcus thought they were inferior because their personalities were unfit for the company. However, all of these researchers, he would take 2 of them under his wing, making them his proteges. And these 2 will be none other than Dr. Albert Wesker and William Birkin. In 1977, Marcus made an achievement with the T-virus by incorporating leech DNA into the virus, thus creating a strain of progenitor suitable for weapons research. In the subsequent months, he transitioned to animal experimentation involving a range of subjects from amphibians to reptiles to mammals. While he maintained his fascination with studying the virus effects on leeches, there was an increasing interest in advancing to human experimentation. Most test subjects were children, and those that were infected ended up discarded. Anyone infected with the virus becomes a walking corpse with a hunger for warm flesh and blood. Soon, there were growing tensions between Spencer and Marcus, as both were paranoid of each other. Umbrella HQ ordered the closure of the training facility in 1978, thus depriving Marcus of his 2 apprentices, Wesker and Birkin. In 1988, a team of Umbrella Security Service forces burst into his lab and assassinated him on Spencer's orders. In his last moments, he saw that his apprentices had betrayed him. What they did not see is that a queen leech would enter into him and took the T-virus inside of him, taking years to procreate his new life. Marcus' death would set a chain of events that could lead to the mass death and the fall of Umbrella. Umbrella's military and S.T.A.R.S. As the world entered the 1990s, the company would expand its own private military forces with 2 branches, the Umbrella Security Service and the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service. Both branches were comprised of men and women with impressive military backgrounds. Many of them were mercenaries with past combat experience, communist guerrillas, nationalist terrorists, etc. The Umbrella Security Service would carry out orders to extract valuable assets to the company, silence any potential moles and witnesses that could compromise the company, and destroy any evidence that could implicate the company in the case of an incident that they are responsible for. The Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service would rescue civilians in the case of an incident and extract VIPs that are important to the company. Most of the UBCS are mercenaries, hired hands. In 1996, the Raccoon City Police Department created a special force team comprised of men and women with impressive military backgrounds as well. That team will be called S.T.A.R.S and was formed as the city grew and threats of crime and domestic terrorism grew as well. Funds to create this team came from the private sector rather than local taxes. Due to their influence, Umbrella managed to choose Albert Wesker as the team's captain ahead of the more popular Enrico Marini. There were 2 teams of S.T.A.R.S known as Alpha and Bravo Team. The members of Alpha Team were Captain Albert Wesker, Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Barry Burton, Joseph Frost, and Brad Vickers. And the members of the Bravo Team were Captain Enrico Marini, Kenneth Sullivan, Edward Dewey, Forrest Spire, Richard Aiken, and Rebecca Chambers. Becky was a genius and the youngest member of the team who graduated from the university at the age of 18 with a BSc. While not trained in combat, her role as a medic became recognized. And now, it's time for Resident Evil Zero. In the year 1998, there was a series of grisly murders occurring in the Arklay Mountains. There were reports of families and hitchhikers being attacked by a group of about 10 people. Victims were apparently eaten. Due to the heightened emotions of the citizens, the Raccoon City Police Department had no choice but to dispatch S.T.A.R.S to investigate these cannibalistic murders. The S.T.A.R.S Bravo team was dispatched to investigate, but their chopper suffered an engine failure, forcing them to crash land safely. Rebecca enters an abandoned train to investigate, and what she gets herself into is a nightmare beyond all comprehension. The train was attacked by a swarm of leeches summoned by a mysterious man, turning the passengers into zombies. These passengers were interns that were headed to the Umbrella training facility. In the train, Rebecca encountered Billy Cohen, a disgraced U.S. Army veteran on death row, and is forced to team up with him to survive. The train would start to run and then would derail, leading them to the now zombie and monster-infested training facility. What Billy and Becky don't know is that they were being monitored by Wesker and Birkin, and by the mysterious man who was using the leeches to create copies of the deceased James Marcus. After fighting hordes of zombies and monsters, Billy and Becky encounter the mysterious man, who reveals himself to be none other than Dr. James Marcus himself. The Queen Leech then transforms into its true form after vowing revenge on the company and ultimately the entire world. Despite the odds being against them, Billy and Becky succeed in destroying the monster and escape the facility moments before its destruction. Meanwhile, as Billy and Becky were fighting off Queen Leech, Wesker was confronted by Sergei Vladimir of Umbrella's Russian division. As Wesker activated the self-destruct system of the facility, Vladimir reminded him of the consequences of his actions as they were not approved by Spencer. Wesker fought against two of Vladimir's T-103s and managed to escape of his own. Realizing that Billy is innocent, Rebecca decides to let him go as she seeks refuge in a nearby mansion to reunite with her teammates and call for help. "24 hours after losing contact with the Bravo team, S.T.A.R.S Alpha team headed to the Arklay Mountains to rescue their teammates. What they found is the derelict remains of the Bravo team's helicopter, including the mangled remains of its pilot, Kevin. As they continued to search for the other members, Alpha team was attacked by a pack of ravenous zombie dogs, killing their teammate Joseph Frost. Chris, Jill, Barry, and Wesker run away from the zombified dogs and seek refuge in the mansion. Alpha team thought the mansion was safe, but they discovered that it is infested with zombies and monsters. During their trek, they saw many members of the Bravo team dead or zombified. They will also encounter a lethal creature, Lisa Trevor. In the underground caves of the mansion, Jill discovered that Enrico Marini was still alive. Marini would tell Jill that this was all orchestrated by Umbrella, but before he could say any more, he was eliminated. With the help of Rebecca and Barry, Chris and Jill managed to enter the secret lab. The team would discover the ultimate weapon created by Umbrella, the Tyrant. Wesker revealed his plans to them, to lure S.T.A.R.S into the mansion to test their combat abilities with the BOWs and also threaten the family of Barry Burton. Wesker also planned to sell the Tyrant to one of Umbrella's biggest competitors. Before they could arrive in the chamber, Wesker injected himself with a virus provided by Birkin. The virus could put him in a state of temporary death and resurrect him with superhuman powers. Therefore, he unleashed the Tyrant and allowed it to attack him. Jill and Chris succeeded in destroying the Tyrant and managed to escape from the mansion as it exploded. They tried to expose the truth about Umbrella. Unfortunately, due to lack of evidence, the people thought their story to be bogus. Barry would send his wife and daughters to Canada, where they would be safe. Chris would go to the main headquarters of Umbrella in Europe. Jill would stay behind, and Rebecca Chambers would leave the city. It was not over. This was only the beginning. The fall of Raccoon City. Moments before the mansion was obliterated, Wesker had resurrected and would put his newfound power to the test fighting multiple undead and BOWs, until he finally had one final showdown with Lisa Trevor. He shot the chandelier, which fell on Lisa Trevor as he walked away like a total badass. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, he was ready to enact his revenge. 2 months after the mansion incident, Wesker would go underground and join forces with a mercenary called Ada Wong. She was hired to infiltrate Umbrella and gain information about the new virus called Golgotha, the G-Virus for short. The G-Virus is the agent that can turn humans into the ultimate bioweapons and has the capacity to revitalize dead cellular functions. It is superior to the T-Virus in every way. The mastermind behind the G-Virus project is none other than Dr. William Birkin himself. Birkin sought to sell his greatest creation to one of Umbrella's biggest competitors, but what he failed to realize was that Umbrella did not play games with anyone. An Umbrella Security Service team led by Hunk infiltrated Birkin's laboratory to capture him and obtain the G-Virus samples from him by any means necessary. In the confusion, Birkin was shot, the samples were taken, and he was left for dead. Big mistake, dudes. What they failed to see is that Birkin hid a vial of the G-Virus in his coat pocket and injected himself with it, much to the shock of his wife, Annette. Eventually, Birkin became his own creation and hunted down Hunk and his teammates in the sewers, killing them all but one. The T-Virus samples dropped on the floor were consumed by rats and would poison the city's water supply, and this would send the peaceful little town of Raccoon City to its unavoidable destruction. The virus broke out in Raccoon City and hit it with a devastating blow, crippling its very foundation. S.T.A.R.S survivor Jill Valentine was attacked by a hulking new type of bow called Nemesis. The objective of this beast was to hunt down and eliminate all members of S.T.A.R.S, since they have become a threat to Umbrella's plans after the mansion and training facility incidents. Jill was saved by Brad Vickers and helped her escape the chaotic streets swarming with zombies. Unfortunately, Brad ended up bitten and gave his fellow S.T.A.R.S member time to escape. The Nemesis would attack Jill, but was saved by UBCS member Carlos Oliveira. Jill will become furious upon learning that Carlos is a mercenary for Umbrella. She meets Sergeant Victor Mikhail and Tyrell Patrick, who ask her to help the train move by restoring the city's electric power. Jill is forced to cooperate with the enemy to escape the city. During this trek, she encounters a traitorous mercenary named Nikolai Zhinovayev. After fighting many monsters, avoiding the Nemesis, and restoring the city's power, Jill manages to enter the train. When Mikhail is about to realize the treacherous nature of Nikolai, the Nemesis attacks the train, killing all of the survivors. Nemesis mortally wounds Mikhail, and Nikolai leaves Jill to die. Mikhail then sacrifices himself, and Jill is the only survivor after the train derails in the explosion. Meanwhile, Carlos and Murphy head to the Raccoon City Police Department to get information on a scientist called Nathaniel Bard, who has discovered a vaccine for the T-Virus. They witness a zombified Brad by Lieutenant Marvin Brana of the RPD. Once they get the information, Carlos receives a distress call from Jill about the train, the civilians, and Mikhail's fate. Jill then engages in a fight with the now bipedal Nemesis at the clock tower and defeats it. But the Nemesis was not done yet, as it makes one more attack at Jill with its tentacle, infecting her with the virus. Carlos finds her and takes her to the hospital. "24 hours later, two people were headed for Raccoon City unaware of the inferno that they were walking into. They were Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield. Leon was a rookie police officer headed to Raccoon City on his first day in the force. Claire was a college student who went to the city to search for her lost brother, Chris Redfield. The two of them would encounter each other at a gas station and were attacked by zombies. They managed to escape and head to the RPD for safety, but they also realized that the city is infested with zombies and monsters. They managed to get to the police station only to find it infested with zombies and monsters. Leon encounters the man who was supposed to be his superior, Lieutenant Marvin Brana. Unfortunately, the latter ends up joining the ranks of the undead. He would then encounter a woman claiming to be an FBI agent, Ada Wong. He and Ada would track down Annette Birkin, where during the chase, Leon was injured and Ada proceeded with the chase. But then she ended up injured. Leon then manages to save her, and the two head for the underground lab called Nest. Meanwhile, Claire encountered a girl named Sherry Birkin, daughter of William and Annette. Claire and Sherry are then cornered by the creepy police chief, Brian Irons, who captures Sherry and takes her to an orphanage. In exchange for her safe return, he demands Sherry's pendant from Claire. At the orphanage, Sherry attempts to escape her captivity, but is caught by the creepy police chief, who tries to teach her manners, but throws acid in his face. Atta girl, Sherry. This results in a hide-and-seek chase where Sherry outsmarts the chief by taking his key. But then, Irons manages to catch her, and William, in his monster form, forces a G embryo into the creepy chief. Ladies and gentlemen, Father of the Year, right there. When Claire heads to the orphanage, which was used as a front by the company to experiment on children with the T-virus, Brian Irons confronts her for taking too long and curses William in his final moments when the G embryo bursts out of his stomach, kind of like the chest burster in Alien. Sherry and Claire are then pursued by a Bao known as Mr. X, a tyrant sent by the company to recover the G-virus sample from Sherry's pendant. When Mr. X catches up with Sherry and Claire opening the elevator door, William rips the creature apart in one last act of humanity, saving his daughter once again. Claire encounters Annette in the sewers and both are searching for Sherry, but then Sherry will be infected with a G-virus by her father. After much argument, Annette tells Claire to head to the underground lab where she will administer a cure for her daughter. Leon would learn through Annette that Ada is not an FBI agent, but a mercenary from an unspecified organization trying to obtain the G-virus. When Leon confronts Ada about it, she is shot by Annette and Leon tries to save her, but then she falls to her death. Claire would help Annette by facing off against the more grotesque mutant William as he continues to evolve. Annette cures her daughter with the antidote, but due to her mortal wounds, she dies. But not before professing her love for her daughter. As Leon is heading down to an elevator that leads to the train, he faces off against the evolved Mr. X, but suddenly, he is given a rocket launcher and destroys the hulking monster for good. Claire is in another elevator where she confronts the third malformation of Birkin and defeats him as well. The three survivors manage to escape the exploding underground lab, but celebration is cut short as the fourth malformation of Birkin appears to kill them. But then, Leon and Claire succeed in finally taking the monster down for good. The three then leave in the morning sunrise after a jackass truck driver doesn't give them a ride. The fourth survivor. Umbrella operative Hunk, after his entire unit is decimated by the mutated William Birkin, regains consciousness in the sewer as the only survivor. He then learns from the helicopter pilot that Raccoon City is set to be destroyed to prevent further viral outbreak. Now in possession of one of the G-virus samples, he shoots his way through a horde of zombies and monsters to escape with it by making his way to a helicopter.
Why'd you come back?
I wanted to meet the Grim Reaper.
Carlos and Murphy manage to find a cure and they administer it to Jill while fighting hordes of undead and lizard-like humanoid monsters called Hunters. Carlos warns Jill that a missile is about to hit the city to prevent further outbreaks. Jill discovers that the hospital leads to an underground lab. There, she finally manages to make a cure that can save the entire city. But then, Nikolai steals the cure from her, leaving her to fight with the Nemesis in the garbage disposal. Carlos manages to help her and leaves the Nemesis in the pool of acid. But this creature comes back more times than Goku being revived. The Nemesis returns once again in its final form, and Jill manages to use a powerful cannon to destroy it once and for all. She and Carlos encounter Nikolai, who destroys the only hope of saving the city. Carlos and Jill then defeat him and leave him to die along with Raccoon City. The government then files a missile to destroy the entire city, wiping Raccoon City off the map, and the death toll surpasses 100,000 victims. The destruction of Raccoon City will be a nail in the coffin for Umbrella, although the company was held responsible for the incident, it still had enough money to bribe the US government. Money moves the world.
Resident Evil Survivor.
1 month has passed since the destruction of Raccoon City. A helicopter crashed on the outskirts of Umbrella's private township, located on Sheena Island. The pilot escapes the burning wreckage of the chopper and finds himself fighting a battle against the living dead. He has no memory of his identity, nor the reasons for him being there. His name is R. Thompson. Thompson encounters Andy Holland, who knows him as Vincent Goldman, the man said to be responsible for the outbreak of the T-virus on the island. Because of his amnesia, he assumes this as a fact. After escaping the city, he comes across two siblings named Lot and Lily Klein, whose parents used to work for Umbrella. During this trek, Thompson too starts to remember that he was sent to Sheena Island by his friend Leon S. Kennedy, and that Lot knew who Vincent Goldman really was. After fighting a bunch of zombies and monsters, Ark and the Klein siblings arrive at a landing zone where a helicopter waits. And of course, a tyrant comes to kill them, the Hypnos tyrant. Ooh, Hypnos? Sounds like a Pokemon. Thompson fights against the persistent creature and destroys it with not one, but 2 missiles. The 3 survivors escape from the island into the morning sunrise as the island's complex self-destructs. Three months have passed since the destruction of Raccoon City. Claire Redfield infiltrated a Paris lab facility of Umbrella as she searched for her lost brother, Chris Redfield. She is then captured and transferred to the Rockford Island prison facility. The island was then attacked and the T-virus was leaked, creating countless zombies and monsters. This island was not only a prison, but a research facility experimenting with the T-virus. There are even new hostile creatures such as the Bandersnatch and the Albinoid. Claire would encounter another inmate, Steve Burnside, whose father used to work for Umbrella. The reason he and his father became inmates there is due to the latter trying to steal information and expose the company. The two would encounter Alfred Ashford, the man who runs the island and makes them play a game of death. Claire would discover the very much alive Wesker, who reveals that he is the one who attacked the island. After a confrontation, Wesker lets Claire live as he believes that she is still of some use. She and Steve would confront Alfred, who in his twisted mind was posing as his twin sister Alexia the whole time. Alfred then activates a self-destruct system to kill both Claire and Steve. The two then escape by plane, but a tyrant released by Alfred enters the cargo area. Claire manages to take down the hulking creature, but Alfred remote controls a plane, which crash lands into the Antarctic facility. Claire and Steve then regain consciousness and search for a way to escape. The facility is also infested with zombies and monsters due to the T-virus outbreak there as well. The two then learn about an Australian observation base located 7 miles away, and then they proceed to escape. But Alfred tries to stop them one last time, and he is wounded by Steve. But then, the Nosferatu escapes his restraints and tracks down the duo. At the helipad, Claire and Steve confront Nosferatu, and she puts him out of his misery. As they head for the Australian observation base, Alexia awakens to see her brother in his final moments. In an act of revenge, Claire and Steve are captured. Back on Rockford Island, Chris learns from the guard who released Claire that she escaped by plane, but a giant worm eats him whole, and Chris goes to save him. In the guard's final moments, he gives Chris the lighter she gave him as a token of thanks for releasing her. Chris then encounters the resurrected Wesker, who is about to kill him, but not before telling him that Claire is in the Antarctic with Alexia, who appears on a screen taunting the two with her maniacal laughter. Chris then finds a plane and flies all the way to the Antarctic base of Umbrella. He then reunites with his sister and the two confront Alexia, who is playing a game of death with them. Both do they love game of deaths, those two. Claire then finds Steve tied up, but then he mutates as he was injected with a Veronica virus. Claire runs from Steve Monster, and Alexia's tentacle grabs her so that Steve can kill her. And just when Claire is about to be history, Steve's humanity overcomes a monster and turns on Alexia, who mortally wounds him and then turns human again as he dies in the sobbing Claire's arms. The end of Steve Nardo di Bernsidio. Wesker then confronts Alexia to take her in and obtain the T. Veronica virus, but she declares him unworthy of its power as she turns into a humanoid monster. In a kick-ass fight, Wesker decides to let Chris handle her. After winning the first round, Chris manages to save his sister as he activates the self-destruct system. Alexia then appears to stop them, and they fight her. As Alexia takes a more grotesque form and then a dragonfly-like form, a video message by Alexander plays as the linear launcher is released. Chris then uses a super weapon and kills a maniacal Alexia, but Claire is taken by Wesker. As Chris gives chase, Wesker lets Claire go and says that he has Steve to work with, as in his body there is still some of the Veronica virus left. Chris tells his sister to leave, and Claire then heads to the plane. Chris and Wesker then engage in an awesome Matrix-style fight scene. As Chris is getting his ass kicked, Wesker gloats in his newfound power, but then Chris improvises by pulling down a lever and sending steel beams down on Wesker. But that's nothing to Wesker. Chris then manages to survive as an explosion scars Wesker's face and vows to kill his enemy next time. Chris and Claire escape the exploding facility, and the two proceed to a new mission: the destruction of Umbrella. "4 years since the horrendous incident at Raccoon City, Leon S. Kennedy became an agent for the US government. He was then recruited for a mission in the South American village to team up with Special Agent Jack Krauser and apprehend a cartel leader called Javier Hidalgo. Hidalgo had infected his daughter Manuela with the Veronica virus. Once the two encountered Manuela and secured her, they would proceed to head to Hidalgo's accomplice to apprehend him. He would then inject himself with the virus in order to become Audrey 2, a mutant plant. They are successful in rescuing Manuela and defeating her father. However, during the battle, Krauser was wounded on his arm and infected by the virus. Shortly thereafter, Krauser was discharged from the military. This event would send Krauser down a darker path and would contact Albert Wesker to join him. The end of Umbrella. The incidents of Raccoon City and Rockford Island gave birth to a new age of bioterrorism, and so, a new paramilitary group to counter this new menace to the world was formed: the Biohazard Security Assessment Alliance, or BSAA for short. Chris and Jill led the team into the Russian facility of Umbrella. What they did not know is that Wesker was also there to settle the score with Vladimir. While Chris and Jill were battling it out with the powerful tyrant known as Talos, Wesker was confronted by Sergei Vladimir, who sent the two Ivans to kill him. But thanks to his superhuman abilities, Wesker was more than a match for those two hulking BOWs. Sergei infects himself with the T-virus and engages in one final battle with Wesker, who succeeds in destroying him. Wesker would then proceed to steal the data that the company accumulated over the years of research. He then erases the computer and leaves the facility with a new goal: the resurrection of the company under his leadership. With the whole affair of Raccoon City gone public, Umbrella was found guilty on all charges. The United States government would then order an indefinite suspension of business agreed to Umbrella. Soon its stock prices crashed, and for all intents and purposes, Umbrella was finished. Although the company had fallen, a new age of bioterrorism had begun. The ultimate irony came to be that the world was safer with Umbrella than without it.
Resident Evil 4.
6 years have passed since the destruction of Raccoon City. Ashley Graham, daughter of the US president, was headed home from Spain after studying abroad. She was then captured by a cult calling themselves Los Iluminados, Spanish for the Enlightened Ones. Leon was given the mission to find and rescue Ashley and stop the cult. Two police officers would take him to a remote village where Leon would encounter the crazed townsfolk. Leon discovers that the villagers were infected with a parasitic organism called Las Plagas, Spanish for the plagues. He was knocked out by Vitores Mendez, the big cheese of the village. With the help of a former cop from Madrid, Luis Serra, Leon managed to escape death. While crossing the lake, Leon fought a giant creature and destroyed it, but lost consciousness as he coughed out blood. Leon will regain consciousness and fought many other villagers called Los Ganados and a giant monster called El Gigante. He finally managed to find Ashley locked in a church, only to encounter the cult leader, Osman Sattler. Sattler's plan was to capture Ashley, send her back so she could infect everyone with a plaga parasite that she was injected with. Leon would escape the village by defeating Chief Mendez and seeking refuge in a castle. The castle belonged to Ramon Salazar of the once distinguished Salazar family, who also became part of Sattler's cult. Luis Serra would be killed by Sattler, but gave Leon the medication necessary to temporarily prevent the plaga inside him from growing and ultimately taking over him. Ashley would then be captured again, and Leon would be held by Ada Wong. Ada was on a mission to obtain the Master Plaga sample held by Sattler, and alongside her was Jack Krauser, who was working for Wesker and infiltrated Sattler's cult. Leon would succeed in defeating the crazed Salazar and headed to an island to save Ashley. He would then run in with Krauser, who has now superhuman strength thanks to the plaga inside of him. Leon would then be fighting against various creatures and commandos infected with Las Plagas, and would defeat his former friend, Krauser. Ada would encounter Krauser for one final showdown, and she will ultimately defeat him.
That's a large thing you have there. But I don't like it when men play rough.
She would then help Leon save Ashley and have a fight with Sattler, but was captured. Leon and Ashley managed to remove the parasites in their bodies before they could fully mature and take over them, thus becoming Sattler's puppets. Leon then saves Ada and engages in a final showdown with Sattler, who turned into a bipedal-like creature. Much like in the past, Ada gave Leon a rocket launcher with a powerful projectile, which finally kills Sattler off for good. Leon escapes with Ashley, while Ada escapes with a plaga sample.
Resident Evil Revelations.
The story of Revelations is one of 3 stories that bridges the gap between Resident Evil 4 and 5. The other 2 are the CGI movie and TV series Resident Evil Degeneration and the Netflix series Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, in which we will talk about soon. The story of this game depicts the Biohazard Security Assessment Alliance, a counterterrorism group co-founded by former S.T.A.R.S members Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine. Jill is partnered with Parker Luciani, while Chris is partnered with Jessica Sherwood. Jill and Parker board the abandoned ship called the Queen Zenobia, where unimaginable terrors await them as they search for Chris and Jessica, who disappeared during their mission in the Snowy Mountains to stop a group called Il Veltro. Il Veltro is a bioterrorist group responsible for the recent outbreak in the Aquapolis called Terra Grigia, which was destroyed on orders from Morgan Lansdale, director of the Federal Bioterrorism Commission. Jill and Parker are ambushed by the bioterrorist group and then imprisoned. Chris and Jessica then receive a call from the BSAA to rescue both Jill and Parker at Queen Zenobia, in which they eventually succeed and prevent Il Veltro from releasing the T-Abyss virus into the sea, thus preventing further contamination. Resident Evil Degeneration is the first fully animated feature film that takes place in the canon of the main games, unlike the live-action movie series by Paul W.S. Anderson. The first 2 live-action movies were true to the source material, but then, this movie series deviated from it from the 3rd to the 6th movie. This movie features a return of Claire Redfield, who is part of a non-governmental organization called TerraSave. The purpose of this organization is to search and rescue victims of chemical and bioterrorist attacks. When she arrives at Harborville Airport to meet with a friend and her niece, Rani Chawla, it falls under a T-virus attack from a crashed airplane and the terminal. She coincidentally runs in with Senator Ron Davis, a vocal opponent of TerraSave, and she, Rani, and the moronic senator are forced to hide from the zombies. Leon S. Kennedy, with the help of officers Angela Miller and Grant Glenn, managed to rescue Claire, Rani, and Senator Davis. Unfortunately, Glenn is infected and the group is forced to leave him. The one man responsible for the attack on the airport is Curtis Miller, brother to Angela, who has infected himself with a G virus to get revenge on the American government for the cover-up of the destruction of Raccoon City. The iconic duo from the Resident Evil 2 game succeed in stopping Curtis and preventing a nationwide viral outbreak. Due to the actions of Wolf Pharma CEO Frederick Downing for selling the T-virus to criminals and his involvement in the airport incident, Wolf Pharma stocks crashed and became defunct. It will be replaced by the company called Tricell. In the year 2000, a helicopter was shot down in the South Asian Republic of Panamistan. The crew of the chopper is attacked by the locals, and then a unit called the Mad Dogs had to rescue them. In 2006, Claire is in Panamistan, where she discovers hints that the survivors of the ongoing conflict were exposed to bioorganic weapons. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., there was a hacking incident in the White House as well as a zombie attack. Leon S. Kennedy defends the White House from the zombies and later reunites with Claire Redfield, who has been investigating a strange drawing made by a child refugee while working on a TerraSafe-led mission to oversee construction of a welfare facility in Panamistan. Defense Secretary Wilson plans to breed super soldiers to use against the enemies of the United States, but his plans are thwarted by Leon and Claire. Leon refuses to publish Wilson's actions to the world and prevent governments from further using BOWs, as they could cause destruction on a global scale. Good thinking, Leon. Very good thinking. The BSAA received a tip about the location of Oswald E. Spencer, one of the original founders of Umbrella Inc. Chris and Jill are given the mission to raid his estate and arrest the old man to get information on the whereabouts of Albert Wesker. As they enter the estate, it brings them back bad memories from the Spencer mansion in the Arkley Mountains back in 1998. As Chris and Jill are searching for Spencer, they find his security killed by blood-like creatures. Once they finally enter Spencer's office, what they find is a corpse of Spencer, and standing on it is none other than Wesker himself. Chris and Jill try to apprehend him, but it is hopeless due to Wesker's superhuman abilities. Wesker prepares to deliver the final blow to Chris, but Jill lunges at Wesker as the two of them crash through the window and fall down the precipice. Chris can't do nothing but look at his partner's apparent death.
Resident Evil 5.
In 2009, Chris travels to Africa to investigate a possible smuggling of BOWs in the Kijuju region. He is partnered with Sheva Alomar of the West African BSAA branch, and the two attempt to rendezvous with the BSAA's Alpha team. Their mission is to intercept and apprehend Ricardo Irving for the smuggling of BOWs. By the time Chris and Sheva arrive in the city, they realize that the townspeople have been infected with Type 2 plagas, and they execute the contact they met with earlier. They barely escape the Magini and meet with Captain Deschamps, who tells them about Irving's deception and succumbs to his wounds. They fight against a creature made of leech-like worms, with Chris correctly assuming that it was responsible for Alpha Team's destruction. The BSAA Delta Team then saves Chris and Sheva from a pair of Magini on motorcycles, and Captain Josh Stone, leader of the Delta Team, provides Chris with a memory card containing images of his supposed dead partner, Jill Valentine. The pair manage to corner Irving in a facility beyond the mines, but manages to escape with the help of a mysterious hooded figure when he sends a giant bat to attack Chris and Sheva. They manage to survive and give chase immediately with the help of a BSAA agent, David Johnson, across the savannah to rendezvous with the rest of Delta Team. Upon arrival, the Delta Team has been wiped out, and Johnson is crushed to death by a gigantic BOW. After Chris and Sheva defeat the monster, they are told to report back to headquarters, but Chris is determined to find Jill and rescue her, prompting Sheva to follow him despite agreeing with reporting to HQ at first. They arrive at the marshlands and travel through a small village inhabited by the Indapaya indigenous tribe. The tribe has been infected with Las Plagas by Irving after tricking them with a vaccine that can cure a deadly disease, which is obviously a fake. As they escape, they realize that behind this incident is Tricell, the company that replaced Wolf Pharma after the Harvardville incident. Irving is cornered once again, but he is forced to inject himself with the dominant species Plaga and turns into a monster. Once Chris and Sheva defeat him, he blames his predicament on Exela Guion of Tricell's West African division. Barely escaping the infected Indapaya in the caves, Chris and Sheva discover the flower known as Stereo of the Sun, the source of the progenitor virus. They see that the research facility was once used by Umbrella, and it is now owned by Tricell. While searching for Jill, a giant BOW known as U-8 attacks them. After successfully dispatching the creature, Excella appears on the screen denying knowledge about Jill and telling them to leave. Chris and Sheva then finally corner Excella, only to be attacked by both Wesker and the hooded figure, who is none other than the brainwashed Jill Valentine. Chris tries to reason with her during this hand-to-hand fighting. During the fight, Chris discovered a spider-like device attached to Jill on her chest, and both Sheva and Chris managed to remove it. Jill is remorseful for what has happened since she had no control over her actions. The two agents then go to stop Wesker. At a ship, Excella was injected with Ouroboros, a progenitor-based RNA virus developed by Wesker. Excella believed that she was going to rule alongside Wesker in his new utopian world, but it turns out that she was only a pawn. Chris and Sheva put Excella out of her misery and proceed to find Wesker to stop him once and for all. Once they encounter him, he reveals his plan to Chris and Sheva to spread Ouroboros on a global scale, resulting in the eradication of humanity and ruling over the survivors as a god. He believes that every day humans come one step closer to self-destruction, and that he is not destroying the world, he is saving it. Gotta love that line, one of my favorites in this game. Jill then calls and informs him of Wesker's weakness. Regular doses of a serum called PG67A/W. Overdoses would weaken him, and Sheva realizes that the case Excella dropped earlier contained the serum. Chris and Sheva find Wesker in a bomber's hangar, who plans to launch the Ouroboros-carrying missiles to infect the whole world. Despite the odds against him due to Wesker's superhuman speed and strength, they manage to inject him with another serum. They then chase him in the bomber and inject him with some more of it. He is then blasted out of an airlock by Chris, but manages to grab onto Sheva. Tortured by his memories of Jill in the Spencer estate, Chris runs forward and catches Sheva's hand after she loses her grip, refusing to let her share Jill's fate. Sheva shoots Wesker in the face and he falls into the caldera of an active volcano. The bomber itself crashes into the same volcano soon afterward. To their shock, they find out that Wesker is still alive and injects himself with Ouroboros, thus empowering himself and becoming even more insane than he ever was before. Chris and Sheva then fight and defeat him. They then board their escape helicopter, and Wesker emerges from the lava for one final strike. It's the old, "if I die, I'm taking you with me" trope. Using the rocket launchers, Chris yells, "Suck on this, Wesker," and he and Sheva fire on Wesker, finally killing him once and for all, and they fly into the morning sunrise. Resident Evil Revelations 2 takes place 2 years after Resident Evil 5 and before the events of Resident Evil 6. The storyline is episodic, divided into a past scenario with Claire Redfield and Moira Burton, the daughter of former S.T.A.R.S member and survivor of the Trevor Mansion incident in the Arklay Mountains, Barry Burton, who has a present-day scenario. Claire and Moira are attending a terror-safe office party until their headquarters is attacked. They and several other terror-safe members are captured by armed mercenaries. Claire and Moira are taken into a facility on Sign Island, where they are attacked by the afflicted, mutated humans driven insane by torturous experiments. Watching them via cameras is an unknown woman calling herself the Overseer, who tells them that the bracelets on their wrists record fear as the pair try to find safety. 6 months later, Barry responds to his daughter's distress call and tracks her to the island. He immediately meets Natalia Corda, a strange little girl with the ability to sense monsters before they become a threat. During this trek, Natalia takes Barry to the Overseer's tower and learns that she is an orphan whose parents died in the Terra Grigia incident, the trauma having left her immune to fear. And she reveals that the Overseer is none other than Alex Wesker. Just so you don't get confused, Alex and Albert are not brother and sister. Alex is one of the children of the Wesker Project. As Claire and Moira try to survive, they encounter fellow terror-safe members who unfortunately become monsters after succumbing to fear and are forced to be put down. Now, if you got the good ending, Moira survives and Claire destroys Alex with that good old traditional final boss killing weapon, the rocket launcher.
Say hello to my little friend!
Say hello to my little friend!
Smile, you son of a...
You know exactly how that goes most of the time. Resident Evil 2 Damnation is the second fully animated feature film that is canonical to the games. It was another good movie just like its predecessor. In this movie, Leon S. Kennedy comes back again as the main protagonist. Leon goes to Eastern Europe to investigate rumors that BOWs are being used in the local civil war. And, unsurprisingly, they are being used in that local civil war. Throughout most of the movie, Leon fights off these creatures with the help of the woman in the red dress. No, not that woman in the red dress. I'm talking about the one and only Ada Wong. In this movie, the parasite from Resident Evil 4 makes its return as well. That's right, it's none other than Las Plagas.
Resident Evil 6.
Not too many people were fond of this game and considered this game to be the weakest in the series. At the same time, there are fans of the game who love it. If I choose the weakest Resident Evil game, I will say Operation Raccoon City. Anyways, the story is huge and split between 4 campaigns and 7 major characters. Familiar faces such as Chris Redfield, Leon Kennedy, and Sherry Birkin, survivor of Raccoon City, return. Brand new characters such as Helena Harper, Piers Nivan, and Jake Muller are introduced as well. At the beginning of the story, Chris is a drunken wreck after a mission in Edonia which got most of his teammates killed and retired from the BSAA. Though he is hesitant at first, he is convinced by Piers Nivans to return to the battle to end bioterrorism and rejoin the BSAA. Jake Muller is revealed to be the son of Albert Wesker. Wesker had a son? When did he find the time to get laid? We'll never know. He flees the local authorities in Edonia and partners up with Sherry Birkin, the survivor of the Raccoon City incident who is now an agent for the Division of Security Operations. Sherry is there to extract him from the country to create a vaccine for the C virus, and Jake demands a large sum of money in return, which is $50 million.
$50 million? And who you think you kidnapped, Chelsea Clinton?
Probably. Anyways, a powerful creature is chasing them, and they are saved by Chris Redfield, but then the Javo and a large BOW ambush them, and their extraction from Edonia is foiled by the Ustanak, and they are captured by Neo Umbrella led by none other than Ada Wong. Is it the real Ada or not? 6 months later, the US President Adam Benford plans to reveal the government's involvement in the Raccoon City incident back in 1998 during a seminar at Ivy University in the town of Tall Oaks. Before he even had the chance to speak, he mutates into a zombie after inhaling an infectious gas of the newly developed C virus. The virus breaks out, infecting almost everyone on campus. The president ended up infected, and Leon was forced to put him down. The mastermind behind the attack was none other than the Secretary of Defense, Derek Simmons, and Leon tracks him down to a Neo Umbrella lab in China. He goes there with his partner, Helena Harper. In China, Chris and Pierce hunt down Ada, and they encounter both Leon and Helena, who inform him that the Ada they are hunting is none other than a clone. The clone is a woman called Carla Radames, a scientist who was forced to transform into an Ada clone by Simmons. That is when the real Ada shows up and defeats Carla, despite the latter injecting herself with a powerful dose of the C virus. Leon and Helena finally confront and defeat a mutated Simmons with Ada's help. Chris and Pierce fly to an oil rig to rescue both Jake and Sherry and prevent another massive viral outbreak by encountering a massive bioweapon called Hyos. Severely injured, Pierce has no choice but to inject himself with a C virus to turn the tide of the battle and finally defeat Hyos. Pierce then sacrifices himself by forcing Chris into an escape pod and using his mutated abilities to destroy the facility. Jake and Sherry also escape the facility and kill Ustanak as they ride a rocket-powered lift to the surface. In the end, the lab ended up being destroyed by Ada, where Carla was developed before going on her next assignment. Leon and Helena are cleared for duty. Chris remains with the BSAA in command of a new squad after overcoming his guilt. Sherry continues her work as a DSO agent, and Jake starts a new life fighting bioterrorism with his identity concealed by the BSAA. Phew! What a long-ass story that was. Man. Resident Evil Vendetta is the final animated film that is canonical to the games. This movie brings back Rebecca Chambers, survivor of the Umbrella Training Facility and Trevor Mansion incidents in the Arklay Mountains back in 1998. And of course, Leon and Chris return in this one. This ass-kicking trio that survived and destroyed BOWs on a global scale are fighting to prevent another attempt to cause a viral outbreak with a virus called the A virus. Damn. Are these Resident Evil viruses taking every letter in the alphabet? Anyways, this trio that we have known since the first and second games fight a bunch of zombies, monsters, and tyrant creatures, of course. And in this movie, Rebecca is voiced by Erin Cahill, who people remember as the Time Force Pink Ranger, and she's also in a lot of Christmas movies. Huh. She'll probably go in a Home Alone movie someday. In 2015, Leon travels to the city of San Francisco, California, the hometown of that very famous family, to apprehend a robotics engineer named Dr. Antonio Taylor, who was selling classified information to foreign entities outside of the USA. The local police sent a SWAT team to retrieve him, only to encounter firepower from an unknown crew who kidnaps Taylor and transports him to a van. Leon then chases the van down the freeway and is confronted by a female biker working with the kidnappers. Using a badass move, she pulls the brakes on Leon's bike, causing him to fall off. The motorcyclist is revealed to be none other than Maria Gomez. Also in San Francisco is Claire Redfield, who is investigating a dead orca whale and realizes that the cause of its death was a bioweapon. Meanwhile, Chris is informed by Rebecca of 12 deaths from an advanced strain of the T-virus, seemingly forcibly injected into the victims. Chris and Jill then meet with Rebecca and Claire to travel to Alcatraz Island, which is struck by a zombie outbreak. Our 5 heroes of this series fight against hordes of zombies and new forms of Lakers before eventually reaching the armory, where they find blueprints for mosquito-like drones used to infect people with the virus. We see a survivor from the Raccoon City incident named Dylan, who captures our heroes along with Dr. Taylor. Dylan is a mercenary soldier who survived Raccoon City and infects Leon and the Redfields, sparing Jill so she can witness her friends die, like how he was forced to watch his team die. Maria then kills Taylor and escapes to use his drones all over the world. As he dies, Taylor gives Claire a code for controlling the drones. Rebecca then prepares a vaccine for the group and cures them. Leon pursues and kills Maria, and then the group fights against Dylan, who merges himself with a bioorganic weapon and kill him with, you guessed it, explosive weaponry.
Fire!
Resident Evil 7 is the first game to introduce a brand new protagonist, one that has no experience in firearms and is not an ex-cop nor ex-military. His name is Ethan Winters. But before we can get to him, this is how it begins. In 2014, a man called Jack Baker encountered and entered an abandoned oil tanker in a bayou of Louisiana, only to find a little girl there and takes her home. At first, things seem to be normal, but once that little girl wakes up, all hell breaks loose for the Baker family, in which, well, you know. 3 years later, Ethan Winters heads to the Baker family home after receiving an email from a woman claiming to be his wife, Mia, who disappeared long ago. He enters the Baker family home, which looks abandoned. He then finds Mia locked up in the basement and lets her out, only to find out that she is infected with a virus, making her aggressive and violent. And in the struggle, Ethan loses a hand.
Well, give the man a hand!
And then, he encounters the patriarch of the Baker family, none other than Jack himself.
Welcome to the family, son.
I wouldn't let my future father-in-law greet me like this, bro. Then he enjoys the hospitality of the Crace family, which includes Jack, his wife, Marguerite, and their crazier son, Lucas. Ethan's hand is then put back together again somehow. He discovers that his wife Mia and the entire family are infected by a mold virus, which makes him more violent and aggressive. The one to put his head back together was the daughter of Jack and Marguerite, Zoe. With the help of Zoe, Ethan succeeds in surviving the traps and dangers of the Bakers and succeeds in defeating Jack and Marguerite. Ethan will later discover that his wife is an operative working for an agency that developed a little girl called Evelyn, who they turn into a bioweapon. In the end, Ethan successfully destroys Evelyn, and he and his beloved wife, Mia, are rescued by none other than the veteran slayer of bioorganic weapons, Chris Redfield. Chris becomes part of an organization called Blue Umbrella, which is a name that he understandably doesn't like, given his past with Umbrella Inc. The Blue Umbrella organization was created to clean up the mess made by Umbrella. Sometime later, after the events of Resident Evil 7, Chris returns to Dovey, Louisiana to wipe out the Supermole colony and apprehend Lucas Baker at the Abercrombie salt mine. Baker is involved in illegal bioweapons research. As a secondary objective, Chris must rescue his teammates after he neutralizes Baker. So, as you know, Chris manages to defeat Lucas and neutralizes all the bioweapons as well. Weeks later, Joe Baker goes to rescue his niece, Zoe, who is trapped in a crystal state. Once he obtains a cure to save his niece, a swamp man appears and takes her away. It's none other than his brother Jack, who managed to regenerate once again. In the first round, Jack puts his brother in a coffin and throws him into the water. Joe manages to escape and then finds a bionic arm to use against the molded creatures. And in the second round, Joe finally succeeds in defeating his craze-infected brother and manages to save his niece, Zoe. The BSAA then arrived to get both uncle and niece to safety, and Zoe thanked Ethan for helping her. Three years have passed since the events of Resident Evil 7. With the help of Chris, Ethan and Mia have relocated to Europe with their newborn daughter, Rosemary. It seems that this is going to be a happily ever after, but unfortunately, this newfound happiness crashes down when Chris and his Hound Wolf squad raid the house, killing Mia and abduct both Ethan and Rosemary. Damn, Ethan can't take a break. The next morning, an unconscious Ethan wakes beside the crashed transport truck and discovers that Rosemary is missing. As he makes his way through a forest, he enters a village filled with werewolf-like creatures called Lycans. Wow, nice reference to the Underworld movie series, one of my favorites of course. Except that there's no Celine in this one. Bummer. I wonder what Kevin Grevioux and Len Wiseman would say about this. So, Ethan is then captured by Carl Heisenberg after he fails to save innocent villagers in an attack. He is then captured by Heisenberg and brought before the village priestess, Mother Miranda, and her lieutenants, Alcina Dimitrescu, Donna Beneviento, Salvatore Moreau, and Heisenberg himself. And no, not this Heisenberg, it's Carl Heisenberg. Ethan then evades a trap set by Heisenberg and ends up in the castle of Lady Dimitrescu, a tall, vampire-like woman with 3 daughters. He receives help from a mysterious merchant known as the Duke in the hopes of finding his daughter. After eliminating Dimitrescu and her daughters, the Duke tells Ethan that Mother Miranda placed Rosemary in 4 different flasks for a special ritual and that she can be restored if Ethan recovers the other flasks, held by the remaining lords. Damn, that is so brutal. He then kills Beneviento and Moreau to obtain their flasks, and then faces off against Heisenberg himself for the final flask. After killing Heisenberg, Ethan confronts Chris for what he did, who reveals that the Mia he killed was actually Mother Miranda in disguise, who has a power of mimicry. After that, Ethan confronts Mother Miranda and gets killed. Chris and his squadron discover the truth about Mother Miranda and her experiments with Omega Mycete. As usual, like in every Resident Evil final battle, he plans to blow her up, destroy the Omega Mycete, and evacuate the area. Typical. The truth is that Ethan was always dead, as he was infected by the mold since the beginning of Resident Evil 7. The resurrected Ethan then fights against Mother Miranda, who wants to revive her beloved daughter, Eva, and with Ethan's intervention, Little Rose is revived. He finally kills Mother Miranda and sacrifices himself to make sure that Chris's bomb destroys the Megamycete. Chris manages to save Rosemary and Mia, who was captured in the dungeons of the castle, and flies away as the Megamycete is blown sky high. Kaboom. "16 years have passed since the events of Resident Evil Village. Rosemary is now a 16-year-old who has inherited the powers of the Megamycete, and she is a social outcast because of that. I'm sure that Charles Xavier and the X-Men will love to have her. Wishing to get rid of her powers for good, she learns a member of the Hound Wolf Squad named K9 informs her of a purifying crystal within the realm of the Megamycete that can remove her abilities. K9 informs her that she has to find the rest of Miranda's research within the Sea of Consciousness within the Megamycete fragment salvaged by the team. Within that Sea of Consciousness, she encounters a spirit that she calls Michael, who urges her to leave the Megamycete, but she's determined to rid herself of her powers, and Michael helps her. As she goes deeper and deeper, she finally finds the purifying crystal which absorbs her powers, but Mother Miranda's spirit appears, which was all a plan to lure her into the Megamycete, to revive her beloved daughter by using her as a vessel now that she is powerless. Michael immediately manifests, revealing himself to be Ethan's consciousness within the Megamycete, and helps Rose escape, but Miranda catches up to them. Ethan encourages Rose to leave and battles Miranda himself. Seeing her father in danger, Rose is reluctant to leave, but when she hears his agonizing cries, she breaks a crystal and embraces her powers, along with gaining some new ones, and defeats Miranda, finally destroying her existence once and for all. Rose embraces her father, who apologizes for not being there for her upbringing, but says that he is proud of her. Rose's consciousness then leaves the Megamycete. This game will not be released until February 27, 2026, but it turns out that we will be going back to Raccoon City, about 30 years after its destruction in Resident Evil 3. The main character is FBI agent Grace Ashcroft, who is dispatched to investigate a series of grisly murders at a hotel where her mother died 8 years prior. And that wraps it up, Resident Evil fans. I have been a fan of the series since 1998 when I first played Resident Evil 2 when I was 12 years old. Since then, I have loved the series. This series explores the themes of human greed, bioweapons, viral outbreaks, and the consequences of unchecked scientific ambitions that can bring the world to the brink of destruction. There have been so many Resident Evil games since 1996, almost 30 years ago. So many were loved, other games weren't loved, and there are some abominations as well. I hope you enjoyed this first episode of World of Timelines, and I will see you in the next episode. This is John of Video Games and the World. Have a good one.